one of the difficult things about actually making that shift, a lot of people listening to this will relate a lot to just relapsing over and over and over and over, and being in that struggle of, will I ever finally beat this? Will I ever actually get to that point where I can truly move forward in my life? Or am I going to constantly just be relapsing and failing and, going through that shame cycle that happens inevitably after it? And I know for you, you mentioned something to me that was really powerful, which was, there was a shift for you at some point where you went from being apathetic about life, not really giving a fuck, not really feeling excited, to actually living your life from a place of being excited about life and really trying to move forward. And so when did that happen, and how important do you think that is for someone to make that shift?
So that happened. So I went to treatment May 11th, 2008, and that happened a few days after. So initially I went to treatment and I just wanted to go for 2 weeks longer than the last facility I was at, which was 2 months prior in March. I was at one over St. Patrick's Day weekend, and on St. Patrick's Day, I'm like, I'm out of here. This place has nothing to offer me. I'm not as bad as these people. And I bounced. I just walked out the front door. And so I'm back in rehab again. 2 months later, Mother's Day, a few days go by, I clear up, and I'm like, I have this God-inspired thought just enter my consciousness. And the thought was, and I shared this with you the other day, the thought was, why don't you do something different than you've done every single time trying to get sober before? So I'm like, okay, I accepted the thought. It was the universe was speaking to me. And so I accepted that thought and said, okay, I'm going to do everything different. So I'm going to go to lots of meetings. I'm going to get a sponsor. I'm going to pray. I never had a relationship with a higher power. I'm going to get phone numbers. I'm going to engage in groups. I'm going to let people know who I am. So basically I'm going to start showing up for my recovery is what all that means. And I started to get I started to feel a little bit better, and then I started to take things a step further. And the way I did that was before I had gotten sober as well. I think this is important to share. One of my friends he gave me this book, and it was called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And I loved this book, and I would read this book even when I was all strung out. So I did have interest in personal growth and development. I had interest in spiritual principles. I did have some kind of a desire to, learn and grow and live in the present moment and to have a certain faith. So my mom got me this book, You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, and it was all about positive affirmations. So after I had that God-inspired thought and started to take a lot of different actions, I started to stack up even more actions. And we talked about this the other day. I started to set goals for myself. Now, you have to realize, I'm in treatment again. I weigh 150 pounds. I don't have anything. I literally own nothing. I don't have a job. I have no college education. I barely graduated high school. I've got nothing. And I have a really low self-esteem. I have a poor self-image of who I am as an individual. And I start to set goals for myself. And these books, The Power of Now and You Can Heal Your Life by Louise L. Hay, which was all about positive affirmations, I started to read that book specifically, and I started to practice the principles in that book, and I started to feel good about myself. So I'd look in the mirror and I would say, I am adequate today. I am good enough. I can be a productive member of society. I can stay sober one day at a time. Just simple affirmations. And I'd look at myself in the mirror, and I'd also write them down as well. And I started to feel better, so I started to set goals of things that I wanted to achieve. I'd never done that before. And I started to journal every single day. I would write in the morning, I'd write at night, and I would write about everything, you name it, what I ate, who I talked to, what I heard at a meeting, what I read out of a book, a letter that I got from my girlfriend at the time. I would journal all of it. And it was a really great way to creatively express myself and to get thoughts out of my head and onto paper. And And I would also write about, if I was having certain cravings or how I was feeling, whatever, I would put it all down. And it was awesome. And I did that for like 2 years straight. And then I got away from that. And we'll get into that later. I got away from that. And then I found the Miracle Morning years later. So journaling, I would also write gratitude. I would exercise my mind to feel gratitude, which, at that time in my life, again, treatment, things weren't going too hot, but I would still always try to find the good. And oftentimes then, I'd burnt my life to the ground, and I would just be grateful that I had a bed to sleep in, or that the treatment center I was at provided meals for us, or, I had clothes with me, simple things, there's gratitude in the simple things. I would read books. I would work out at the gym, I would pray. And all of these actions started to drive different results and different emotions and different feelings. And I started to change very quickly. And it was noticeable, I didn't even notice it. For me, it's hard on the inside to notice how I look on the outside, I know I felt better. I know my life was starting to improve, and I was in treatment for almost 90 days. But people that I was in there with really started to kind of look up to me, and those desires that I had to fit in, and the need and the want to fit in and be a part of, really just kind of fell to the wayside, because I was growing in confidence in who I was as an individual, and I was starting to contribute just by showing up to life in a different way for other people, And my parents really started to notice differences in my character and just who I was as a son, who I was as a brother. And, it really was like this spark that ignited me on a different path. And I haven't looked back since. So you had mentioned The Miracle Morning. What a great book that is. And it wasn't around back then. I think Hal was probably in the process of launching it or writing it in 2008. He might have launched it in 2008. I didn't know about the book until about a year and a half ago. But a lot of the principles and practices that are in that book were critical for me, as I just described, when I first got sober. Journaling, positive affirmations, reading, exercise. Silence is one of them, but I wasn't meditating back then. I was praying, and visualizing is the last piece of the Savers routine. I wasn't doing that either, but I was doing 5 out of 6. And it was a game changer for me. I believe that the positive affirmations and the goal setting and all of the things that I were doing literally changed the trajectory of my life.
For full-length episodes of the Game Quitters podcast, be sure to check us out on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/GameQuitters, or visit us online at www.gamequitters.com.